This is Guardian Radio, your station for up-to-the-minute news and intelligent, interactive, and engaging conversations. 96.9 FM. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the management and staff of Guardian Radio.
With early detection comes early prevention.
Put that in your pencil, make you feel like a champion.
Rise up again, let nothing keep you down. To live your best, hear the urologist speak. Oh yeah.
Think you're losing grip of your man, don't give up on hope.
Don't be ashamed, it's time to take control. Get some help from the urologist.
You will find
He'll help you solve your problems
on 96.9, yeah.
I telling you, with early detection
Comes early prevention.
Good evening, Bahamas. This is Bahamian Urologist Dr. Greggory Pinto, and joined as always with my co-host, Bahamian General Surgeon and Surgical Oncologist Dr. Wesley Francis. Good evening, Dr. Francis.
Evening, Bahamas.
So we're here trying to to promote preventative medicine. We're trying to be proactive. We're trying to promote as much good health and good living in this society as possible. And as we always mention, this is a very unhealthy society, so we are fighting an uphill battle. But the topic today is a very interesting one, and I hope every week we do have an interesting one. But we're going to talk about all-important sleep. What is the role of sleep in your life? What is the role of sleep in regards to your health? And basically the topic is good sleep for good health. So sleep is not just about rest and regulation. It's about the structure. It's about the delicate balance between chaos and order and your physiological and psychological being. So adequate sleep is actually paramount to healthy living in terms of your brain function, your immune system, your hormone regulation. So while sleep deprivation can increase the risk of many chronic diseases, particularly type 2 diabetes, increases the risk of coronary artery disease, it can lead to increased risk of dementia and Alzheimer's. So sleep allows us, our cells and our muscles and our organs and our brain to repair and renew each and every night. So as surgeons, and obviously previously we were surgical residents, I think, Dr. Francis, we were classical in terms of being perfect scientific subjects for chronic sleep deprivation.
Absolutely.
So we know what it is to have no sleep. We know what it is to function and have to function at the highest level with very little sleep. And we're talking about not for weeks, not for months, but for years and years and years.
It's a daily thing. I mean, when we had those hours being on call and having to be able to function, sometimes on 2-3 hours sleep or less, that was a part of the training. And, because trauma and all sorts of emergencies, they don't have a time. They come at any time of the night or any time of the day. And so even if you were up all night the night before and still had to work, you still had to perform.
And it's a grueling schedule. I mean, many people think, it must be great to be Dr. Wesley Francis, surgical extraordinary, but they're not aware of the years of living hell, profound sacrifices, and suffering required to get to the mountaintop.
A lot of suffering was baked into that.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And lack of sleep. And
you have to go under the greatest of pressures to make a diamond, and not everybody makes it. So we're fortunate to be in the position that we are, and that we're, with God's grace, able to save lives and improve the lives of as many of our residents and Bahamians as possible, and that's what we're doing right here. How did you function with very little sleep? Was it caffeine? We mentioned previously several months ago, the relation of caffeine and our health.
Back in those days, I didn't drink a lot of coffee. I think I drink more coffee now than I did then. But one of the things that, at least in our program that we used to promote, is that we knew that there were going to be times when you could not or you would not sleep. But we had a dictum that every opportunity you get to rest, you make sure you rest. You didn't waste your time being on, doing things that were not productive. If the work was done and you had an opportunity to get some shut eye, you made sure you get that. Because even though we had to stay up late, we knew that it was essential for you to get even maybe a 5 or a 10 minute just to recharge your batteries. And that was something that was important for us. And it became like culture. Listen, we're going to be up all night.
Perfect the power nap.
Right. Yes. Get the power nap in. And try to focus on what you're doing, but make sure that you get some rest, at least something.
And we also had to train our minds to turn off because
Right.
we such a busy schedule, being on call, seeing the worst of humanity in terms of trauma, in terms of cancer and everything else. To be able to just shut that down.
But back then we didn't have as much distractions though, right? It wasn't all these cell phones that you could be roaming all night and all of that stuff. I mean, we had pagers, right?
Correct.
We didn't have all
Correct.
these cell phones. You had regular phones that didn't allow you on the internet all night, you'd have a laptop, but you would be working on something if you had like a project or something to do. And you had to study also during those time periods.
Yes.
But certainly less distraction. We were productive. We had to get the work done. But when we didn't have the work, we had to rest. And rest was important.
So many of our residents are not surgeons or surgical residents, but they do shift work. I mean, we're a tourism-based society, and we do a lot of shifts, whether you're in the casinos, whether you're in the hotels, whether you work for BPL, whether you're on the front line as a police officer, the guardian angels of the medical fraternity, our nurses, they work shifts all the time, and you don't know how the toll it takes on
It does.
an individual.
It does.
Physically, psychologically, internally, physiologically. And there are a lot of studies, long-term studies, that shown it has a profoundly negative impact on not just your health, but your longevity. It can, some studies have shown chronic sleep deprivation can increase your risk of coronary artery disease by as much as 48%. So you shift work can actually shorten your life. So when we have these people who are working shifts, particularly those who are putting their life on at risk and peril or sacrificing, like the nurses or the police, they're actually causing grievous harm to their health, mentally as well. And it causes anxiety, it can cause depression. It completely disrupts their circadian rhythm.
Certainly, from a physiological point of view, it disrupts it. I think what's important though, if people who are on shift work, that when you're off though, you really find the time to go to sleep, to get that rest, because that's important to recharge. You can't be working a night shift and then go home and dealing with all of the mundane activities of living. And not get any rest and then go back on. I think that creates a dangerous cycle. But if you're working at night and then you get home in the morning and you do get some sleep, I mean, that can work. But it has to be a rhythm where in the day, your day becomes night. or the day becomes the time where you get to rest.
I mean,
because rest is important.
The natural body sleep-wake cycle is very much regulated by light and by dark. Yeah. So some persons will admit they just can't fall asleep during the day. And it's terrible because once they get their body cycle used to the shifts, and then they go and work on day shifts again. So, and then even worse, some are 2 nights, 2 days, 2 nights, 2 nights, and your body never adjusts to that at all.
It's almost
and
like perpetual jet lag, right?
Perpetual jet lag, and it can lead to increased risk of obesity. It can lead to increased risk of type 2 diabetes, or making diabetes that already exists more difficult to control. Studies have shown that you can have obesity over a period of someone working 20 years, working night shifts. It's almost inevitable in terms of the incidence is profoundly high. And we already have a society that is 70, 80% either overweight or obese. So put on top of that, our poor, our sedentary lifestyle, our poor diet, and on top of that, we're doing shift works where our body is at ends with itself. that's just a recipe for disaster in terms of unhealthy living, in terms of diabetes, in terms of hypertension, increased coronary artery disease. Once you increase your risk of obesity, then they get in that vicious cycle of obesity, obstructive sleep apnea, particularly for men, and then it goes into low testosterone. Then you're at risk of having metabolic syndrome, where you can have, if you don't have diabetes, hypertension, or high cholesterolemia, you're going to be at risk of getting that, or it'll be more difficult to control. So your body can eat away at itself just from a lack of sleep. So it's imperative that you get at least 7 hours sleep. And it's not just the hours of sleep, it's the quality of sleep. You have to understand that you can be laying in bed, sleeping for a good 8 hours, and you can wake up more fatigued than when you first went to sleep. And that has to do with REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, which is deep sleep, where you dream, where you get replenished, where it's the deepest part of your sleep cycle, where for men, that's where the testosterone that they use throughout the day is replenished. But if you have, for example, obstructive sleep apnea, every time you're in REM sleep, or frequently, just when you get a deep sleep, you're not going to physically have to wake up many times, but you're taken out of REM sleep and put in non-REM sleep, which is superficial sleep. So you're not getting that testosterone replenished. You're not getting that deep sleep. You'll notice you're not dreaming as much. You're going to notice that when you wake up, you feel that 8 hours of sleep really feels like an hour and a half or 2 hours. And it becomes a vicious cycle where it's a pandemic in this country in terms of not of obesity, but for men, obesity, low testosterone, and obstructive sleep apnea. And for many men, they don't even know what sleep apnea is. They don't know what low testosterone is. What is testosterone? They don't know what causes their obesity.
I think the spouses know what sleep apnea is.
Unfortunately, they do, because they're the ones who witness it.
Right.
They're the ones who have to kick their husband because they're snoring so loudly that the house vibrates. They're the ones that are terrified because their husbands stop breathing for a few seconds, and they're wondering. And that could be terrifying. Even you talk about background noise. For some women, even men, women also have sleep apnea. That sleep apnea, that's loud snoring, almost becomes like a comforting background noise where that allows them to sleep.
It's not comforting.
But when it stops all of a sudden, you wake up, and then you wake up to the fact that your spouse has stopped breathing, and it may be many seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds before they start breathing again. It's very disruptive to you. It's an underlay in your life, and it also exponentially increases your risk of heart attack in terms of or stroke.
I think it's important though that we should stress that, because I often see a lot of men in the office for various symptoms not related to sleep apnea at all. But then the wives or the spouses, they told them about, because guys don't usually mention this. They don't talk about it that much. And certainly you can see that they don't accept it. But the spouses usually would say, yeah, he snores a lot, and then you could see where he's not breathing, and I have to hit him and to wake him up so that he could breathe. And so I think men, we need to recognize that this is a real problem. Let's not just think that it's just we're just snorers and that's it. And it's something that can cause chronic disease. And
Very
if it
much
is
so.
that it's correlated with chronic disease, that means then that we should pay attention to it and try to get it treated. And we have a number of physicians who do actually sleep studies who can provide some sort of remedy for this. And it may just be some lifestyle changes that would disrupt this pattern that can lead you down to developing some chronic disease.
And that can lead you to be obese. Being obese makes the sleep apnea worse, which means your testosterone is going to be lower. Your testosterone being low means it's almost impossible to lose weight. No matter how hard you try, and it's going to be very easy to gain the weight. So, as I've mentioned many times, it's a horrible vicious cycle, and you never get out of it unless we treat the root cause, and that's what we always talk about here. In medicine and in anything, you need to treat the root cause. You don't just treat the symptoms. Let's figure out what is happening sometimes. So sleep is a very complex issue. It's not just a part of our bodily function. I'll talk a little bit about the physiology of sleep itself, but there's so many things going on. I mean, we look at the economics of our society. There's some people, how are you going to sleep if you don't know how you're going to pay the rent or pay the mortgage, or how are we going to pay the school fees, or how are we going to make that car payment, or you're out of work and you don't know where your next meal is going to come from, and how you're going to provide for your children, or there's issues with spousal abuse or marital discord, or your child is being bullied at school. There's so many things you take on. You have a bully of a boss at work. As you get older, there are hormonal changes for women, menopause as well. Many men and women have issues with chronic lower back issues where their pain will literally wake them up in the night, or they may have restless leg syndrome where that will wake them up in the night, or there's a lot of peripheral arterial disease, a lower limb peripheral arterial disease where patients, because of poor blood supply to their extremities, you'll wake up with calf pain, rest pain, where to relieve that severe pain, which is a form of ischemia where you're not getting perfusion to your muscles, you literally have to either get up or put your legs over the side of the bed. And if that happens often, where because of that pain, people are walking around their house just to try to relieve that pain, and then they go back to sleep and they got to either put their legs over the side of the bed or walk. If that's happening to you, you need to seek consult of your physician, who will refer you to a vascular specialist, because that could be the beginning of the end. That can lead to you losing.
You're having pain in your feet while you're laying down, and it is relieved when you sit up because now you have the aid of gravity. That can't be normal, right? And
it usually is. It happens gradually. And
yes.
So you'll usually have what we call intermittent claudication, where you'll walk a certain distance, and after that certain distance, every time you start to have calf pain, that will precede you having this rest pain. Again, not something that you should ever ignore. If there's a strong link between peripheral arterial disease and coronary artery disease as well, but that could save your life if you seek a solution to that problem. Men in particular, stop ignoring the problem.
Yeah, because these things don't happen overnight. I mean, if you find yourself walking and you have to stop because of pain in your calf, that's a problem. And if you, what happens is that the distance that you walk before you start to feel pain gets shorter and shorter. And then you go to bed and you are awakened by pain in your feet. That's just a continuation of the primary problem. You have to recognize that that's not normal.
Yes.
And
some people just say that's just a part of getting older.
No.
Those aches and those pains and everything else. Right. Eventually you're going to lose your toe, then you're going to lose your forefoot, and then you're going to get amputation below the knee, above the knee.
And so we see so many of these, so many patients come in with symptoms like this. You come and you lose your toe, or your toe goes dark. If your toe goes dark, meaning it gets mummified. When I say dark, it gets black. It's dead. That's a real problem. But that problem didn't happen overnight. And I think that's one of the things we want to stress on this program, right? A lot of the problems that we have are chronic, and they've been festering and had a start time and a prolonged period before you actually had a real issue. And they're warning signs. And I think each of us have the responsibility of realizing, listen, you know what? This just doesn't feel right. And that's when you bring it to the attention of your primary care physician. And that's what medicine is about, is when you have these early symptoms, early warning signs, and then it's taken from there.
And on top of that, many of the persons who have these symptoms, who have peripheral arterial disease of their lower limbs, they are also diabetics. So on top of that, they have, with the poor blood supply, they'll have an infected diabetic foot. They'll not even have any good sensation. That's another thing, where they may injure their toe, and they have poor vision on top of that. They don't even recognize that. But
here's the thing again, Greg. That doesn't happen overnight.
Yes.
Right? if it is that you're not feeling the bottom of your feet at some point, or the sensation is numb, that's a problem. It is a serious problem, something that you should pay attention to. What happens is that we get patients who come to the hospital basically with some sort of foreign body, perhaps a nail that they would have stepped on, didn't feel it. It's embedded in their feet. It's a rusty nail. And then they get this bad foot infection. It didn't happen overnight.
Very much so.
Okay? It's a gradual process. And if it is that you didn't take care of it, then it gets to the problem, okay, boy, we got this problem, and now we're staring down the barrel of an amputation. It didn't have to happen, right? Because there are warning signs. There are problems that you encounter that, if dealt with earlier, can prevent such complications and can prevent such extreme treatment options like amputations and being laid up in hospital for weeks because of severe foot infections. Diabetes is a chronic illness, and it can be managed and well controlled.
You can have a completely normal life.
Yes.
Completely normal life. And if you work with your physician, behavioral modifications, diet modifications, exercise, etc., being on medication for hopefully a finite period of time, you could actually reverse type 2 diabetes. That should be your goal. Don't have to live with it. It's not something that has to actually be chronic. You can actually reverse type 2 diabetes.
You can. But also, for example, hypertension. Some people have what we call essential hypertension, right?
Yes.
Certainly you could prevent hypertension, right? Diet, exercise, controlling weight. But, we can't always cure hypertension. And in not being able to cure, we can still manage it such that you don't get the complications. Because it's the complication of hypertension which lead to all of these severe poor outcomes, like, stroke, heart disease, heart attacks, kidney failure, which, we have significant amount in our community requiring dialysis. All of these things are things that can be prevented. They can be prevented. Just by seeing your physician, being put on the correct medication, altering, your lifestyle, certain dietary items, exercise, losing the weight, all of these things. And we come on the show every week and try to encourage this because we often have to treat the complications of these.
Yes. And then what I see a lot, and there's a lot of information in the literature, and thousands of our residents deal with this, particularly as they reach middle age and older, is that they just automatically, every single night, wake up between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., sometimes 5 a.m., and they're just staring at the ceiling. They just don't understand why their body is waking them up at that time. They don't understand. They change their regime. They try and have yoga in their evening routine. They try and exercise, but waking up 3 a.m. and they're just staring at the ceiling, no matter what time they go to bed, and it finally affects their quality of life because they're always fatigued. So we have to understand as they get older, we have to look at what is the signal within our body that causes us to wake up at 3 a.m. And it's basically related to hormonal changes. It's related to understanding the sleep pattern itself and the release of cortisol. So when you wake up, what leads to lighter sleep is basically you have to look at what is the physiology of sleep itself. And it's a complex one. I'm not going to bore you, but eventually it's governed by two forces. First is a chemical force called adenosine, which is a molecule in our nervous system and body that builds up the longer that we're awake. So the more we're awake after we've waken up, 12 to 15 hours after we first woke up, our adenosine levels are going to be at their highest level, and that's going to cause us to feel fatigued. So just as you've just slept 8 hours, that's when your adenosine levels are going to be at their lowest because you're going to feel most refreshed. So what caffeine does is that caffeine actually blocks the adenosine receptors. So it doesn't let adenosine bind to the receptor, and it doesn't then to affect the nervous system to allow us to feel that stupor and that fatigue. So what caffeine does, it basically blocks it and prevents the adenosine levels from attaching to the receptor, so you don't have the effect of that sleepiness. But once that caffeine is out of your system, all that adenosine level is built up to higher levels than even before you took the caffeine, and you basically crash.
Yeah.
So you basically crash. So that's the second force governing sleep is what a lot of people understand as the circadian force or the circadian rhythm, which is basically our biological clock. Goes over about a period of 24 hours. So it's an internal clock within our brains. Sleep is also is governed by light, particularly sunlight. So when sun enters our retinal ganglion cells in our eyes, there's an initiation that leads to the release of cortisol. So when we wake up, the hormone cortisol is released from our adrenal glands. Also, we have the release of epinephrine, which is adrenaline, and we feel more revived, we feel more awake. But as the cortisol release initiates the circadian rhythm within the cells, the body will trigger the release of melatonin about 12 hours after this. And the melatonin is what's going to cause us to feel that fatigue, that cause us to feel that tiredness. So it's a complex issue. Sleep is not something that's so simple. It can be affected by environmental factors, by genetic factors, by chronic illnesses. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this interesting topic on the other end of the break.
Beulah, gal, can you believe this? We are now the patrol queens of the neighborhood.
We now large and in charge. So we need to check out what's going on in everybody's yard. What about that gun that we know that Junior and his homeboys just ran out? Can we report that too?
Of course we can.
But we could be in deep trouble if they find out.
We need to report what we see, Beulah. When you call Crime Stoppers, they just answer your call in Miami.
So then we can report everything? Guns, where they hiding the drugs, who shoot who part of which gang, or who disturbing the peace with the loud music and the motorcycles.
Then our neighborhood will be the best in the Bahamas, and everybody gonna want to come live here. And then our house price will go up, gal.
So what we waiting on? What's the number?
If you see something, say something. Let us all pitch in and stop the crime before it's your time. Call 328-8477 from Nassau or 242-300-8477 from the Family Islands. Or text us through the Crack Crime Bahamas app. Stop the crime before it's your time.
You try to rest, but roll with the best. For all your printing needs, there ain't no one better, no. For posters and banners, magazines and flyers. For window decals, greeting cards and newsletters. No job too big and there's no job too small. You name it, we can print it. Just give us a call. Let Print Masters bring your masterpiece to life.
Located in the Nassau Guardian Building, telephone 302-2361.
Love the show? Want to give your support? Become a sponsor today. Call 302-2300 for our rates and packages. That's 302-2300. Become a sponsor on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
Welcome back. This is Urologist Speaks with Bahamian urologist Dr. Greggory Pinto and Bahamian surgical oncologist and general surgeon Dr. Wesley Francis. We were talking about the interesting topic of good sleep, good health, and the plague in our society, the pandemic of insomnia and sleep deprivation that plagues us all to some degree. Some of us acutely, some of us in a chronic form, and it can affect us profoundly in our day-to-day lives. It can lead to mood disturbances, depression, anxiety. It can lead to a lack of production in our lives, professionally, in our school, etc. So this goes across not just adults, also for children as well. But as men get older, and even for women, particularly women in menopause, as many as 1 in 3 women have overactive bladder. One of the causes of their sleep disruption is waking up in the night to urinate. A lot of us are middle-aged men are the cause of our own problems. So we have a problem with sleeping. What do? We self-medicate with alcohol. What does alcohol do? Initially, it's going to be a depressant. It's going to make us sleep. But then it actually leads to a more interrupted sleep, a poor quality of sleep. And not only that, it's going to cause us to produce more urine, have to pee more urgently, more frequently. So that's in itself going to cause us to wake up more. So never self-medicate, never, and even when we talk about a very commonly prescribed prescription drug for sleep disorders, Ambien. There's a lot of abuse of Ambien out there. It can cause, it's a drug. It's a powerful drug that can cause profound negative impact on your life. It can affect your personality. No one should be taking Ambien long-term. No one should be taking Ambien every day. And in fact, the FDA has actually, a couple of years ago, reduced the dosage recommended for women by half, because they found for women in particular, the Ambien is broken down by the liver, that the Ambien and its active ingredients actually stay around a lot longer in women than men. So please don't rely on these medications. A lot of persons will admit, I don't sleep well, but I take an Advil PM, I'll take some NyQuil, and I'm good to go. That's not the solution.
It's all artificial.
It's all artificial. Or I don't understand why you're only sleep 2-3 hours, but maybe you need to look at the 2 cups of black coffee you had half an hour before you went to sleep. Caffeine is going to stimulate your mind. It's going to cause you to pee more frequently and urgently. So you have to look at what we're doing as individuals as well. And if you need to have blackout curtains, you need blackout curtains. Some people are light sleepers. If you have a spouse who snores loudly, first of all, as we mentioned, get them tested for obstructive sleep apnea or central sleep apnea, which can be deadly. That can maybe possibly save your spouse from having an untimely death prematurely. You want to know why someone, your neighbor or your colleague or your church member, dropped dead at 58 or 55 and they seem normal. Maybe you might have noted they put on a few pounds over the years. A lot of it is sleep apnea related to late onset type 2 diabetes, leading to obesity, leading to low testosterone, leading to metabolic syndrome, leading to increased risk of cardiovascular disease. So please listen to your body and listen to those around you, because even for obstructive sleep apnea causing low testosterone, it can actually affect your entire personality. You can be moody, you can be irritable, you can be depressed. Not only that, you don't have that drive to do things. You don't have that impetus to want to do things you used to love. You have no interest in doing things anymore. You don't want to associate with your family. You don't want to do things with your wife anymore. You become withdrawn from society or within your family, within your church, at work. So it can profoundly negatively affect you, and you may not actually be the one to be able to diagnose yourself or realize that there's a problem. So listen to those who love you. And a lot of men, they'll wait till everything is going, all the wheels are falling off the car before they actually will seek some help, where it's almost life or death, where we've already had so many, there's been irreversible damage to so many organs. But let's catch it early, and not only that, let's prevent it from happening, because poor sleep can lead to a complete imbalance in many hormones. So poor sleep can lead to increased production of cortisol, which is a stress hormone.
Sometimes, poor sleep has to do with how you go to sleep or how you try to get to sleep. I mean, sleeping with, TV blasting, noise in the background, all the lights on, that may not work for your body.
Cut down the screen time, particularly for kids. It's very difficult for a kid to shut down if they've had screen time all the way up until the time they sleep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, we have a call coming in.
We got a call.
Good evening.
Okay.
This is Urologist Speaks.
Good afternoon, Doc. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
You know what I've also noticed over a period of times of observation, even with myself, we tend to keep things when it comes to our medical health rather quiet and subdued away from people without sharing information with friends or even family. Like I noticed myself growing up, I think about myself. I used to take a health exam every year, the month of my birthday. I would do a medical checkup. until I became 50 years old. Everything was always okay. Other than I'll have injuries, not mental, hello?
Yes, we're right here.
But injuries during sport, sprains, breaks, and stuff like that, but nothing medical. And then all of a sudden, the doctor's daughter, Dr. Sawyer, Agent Sawyer, when I went there at 50 years old, all of a sudden he said, you're diabetic now. Eh? I said, well, for 49 years, I've been coming to you every year to get my medicals, and everything is okay. How come all of a sudden I'm a diabetic? Well, life begins to change and this and that. Then he says, but once a diabetic, always a diabetic. Then I heard by changing from the medication, the metformin and stuff like that, and doing the plant leaves and stuff, you could bring that down, sugar from 280 down to 113. I tried that and that worked. So I said, I'm not a diabetic no more. But like you said, when you start getting older and you retire, and then you get more days resting, you don't have to go to work no more, you be sleeping during the day. After that, you reach home, you've been sleeping, resting during the day or working around the yard. So at night, you've been resting. It's hard to sleep at night now because you've been sleeping and things during the day.
Very much so. And
So now you're getting older, 10 o'clock, 11, 1 o'clock in the night, you just turn in on TV to try to watch a movie, for a movie to try and help you go to sleep. 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, you're waking up, you're going to the restroom. 4 or 5 times a night, you're going to urinate. Then you find out you had a prostate enlargement. You have this. The other day, out of all my life, all of a sudden, I'm at Dr. Dwayne Sands now. He tells me I have genetic heart failure. Where did that come from? I don't know. Now I'm on something what they call Lexus to make me urinate because my legs swell up and I'm not getting proper circulation of the blood. So now I'm getting up 4 or 5 times a night because of the Lexus, which makes you urinate. And every 5-10 minutes I need to urinate because the whole body structure seems to be changing overnight. And the things that we know now from Google and WhatsApp and the things that we're hearing from people like y'all on talk shows now live and in social service, we never heard these things before unless we went to a doctor in his office. It's just like somebody told me, the world has changed so fast, Doc, in the front of our very own eyes, that by the time the policeman reached the scene of the crime, the lady next door already got a picture of the man on the ground with the bullet wound in his head. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, these are changing times, and that's why we're here. We're trying. Knowledge is key. The health of the nation is the wealth of the nation. So we're trying to be proactive. We're trying to promote preventative medicine. Let's prevent you from becoming a diabetic. Let's prevent you from going down the road of getting cardiovascular disease or heart disease, etc. So there are things that we can do. So what we do in our youth, we pay for in our older years. So don't think that we don't pay for what we do. So you don't want to smoke cigars or cigarettes at all. You need to watch your diet. You need to get some exercise. And we've spoken many times about as you get older and you're retired, you need to keep active mentally and physically. Just as a surgical oncologist, you'll speak about this, Dr. Francis, that if you become overweight or obese, that increases your risk for a menopausal woman to get breast cancer. So just in terms of that, keep your body mass index normal range. Don't put on that weight because that can increase your risk of getting breast cancer.
But the caller, and thank you, caller, for sharing, because I think you really shared your journey with aging as you get older, and he was pretty healthy before age 50, and then that's when things started. First recognizing that he had diabetes, type 2 diabetes, I'm assuming at that point in time. But certainly he had the wherewithal to recognize, get the education to change, do the lifestyle changing, in addition to medication. But he did what is the lifestyle changes. When you get to that point, it now becomes a continued maintenance. We often say to people, let's go and get your annual checkups. But if at your annual checkups you do find something and you then have an identified problem, some chronic disease, you would have hopefully at that point found it at an early stage. It requires maintenance and management. So you no longer become an annual visitor now. We need to continue to do the maintenance on that problem to make sure that you don't develop complications over time. You don't develop complications within that annual period when you only saw the doctor once a year.
Yeah, so then you might have to switch every 3 months.
Every 3 months to manage the problem.
And if it's not being managed well, you might need to see them even.
Right, because if it is that you identify a problem and you don't manage it, then you're going to develop those complications, right? So it's about managing the problems. And I think we often, with our health, we discount it. And we go along with, the busyness of life. We're about taking care of other people, going up and down, traveling, doing this. But we discount what those little small things that eventually lead to larger problems and complications. I think the whole theme and idea is if you're identified to have a problem, you have to undertake the necessary preventative solutions or maintenance to prevent complications. What we're trying to do is prevent complications, right?
We don't want to be reactionary.
No.
We want to be preventative.
Yeah.
And we talk about sleep deprivation and the profound ill health effects of that, even in terms of psychologically, mentally, and emotionally. Then let's talk about our society. We have a very violent society. We have a crime burdened society. How does someone who had a home invasion, how does someone who is a victim of crime, how do they get to sleep? How do they overcome that?
So this is where the mental health aspect of things come. And I think when we talk about mental health, sometimes we think people have pathology, like some depressions, like psychological issues. But I mean, mental health can be just from post-traumatic stress. If you had a home invasion, if you saw some traumatic or killing, the caller said there, again, you see a crime happened on the street, it's all over social media, and you're actually visualizing these horrific sights or pictures even before the police comes in. That stuff is not healthy. We shouldn't be seeing those. And actually, we kind of desensitizing ourselves. And that just creates a society that it becomes more tolerant of violence like that, right? And that's important. Social media is a two-edged sword. I mean, it could be used for good, and it could be horrible also. And you see when all of these pictures going around of bodies lying on the ground, people see these horrific scenes. That stays with you, okay? And this is where you start to see a deterioration of your mental health.
I mean, it's even more complex than that. We have to look at how many of us are actually feeling safe in our own homes. As the husband, as the father, many men actually routinely will wake up 5-6 times in the night to make sure that their house is barricaded down, that no one's trying to break in, that the doors are locked, that no one's trying to jimmy the window. And we're living a life like we're under siege. How can you get someone to feel safe, to have a good night's sleep when we have so much crime in the society? That's a broader question, that's a broader problem, but that's a reality for too many individuals in this society. We're under siege, and we're not sleeping because of it. If you don't feel safe in your own home, even when you lock the door, not only that, we have to have dogs, and many times the dogs will bark at every little thing. They'll bark at the moon, and that in itself will cause you never to sleep, your kids never to sleep, your wife never to sleep, your neighbors never to sleep, and that in itself will never get a good night's sleep.
So this is, we go back to what do people need? There's some physiological needs, right? You need food, you need shelter. Security is an important part of that. Because security leads to peace of mind, right? And these become physiological needs somewhat. And so having good security then lead to better mental health, which then leads to better overall physical health, because obviously mental health or deteriorating mental health can affect you physically, right? With the lack of sleep, with the deranged behavior that can result, that become as a result of this. So all of this is important. Security is very important to a society. And, as you said, we have a crime issue. And I think it's going to take each and every one of us to certainly provide our contribution to fixing that. Right?
Very much so.
And I think we've become too tolerant as a nation, as a people, as a community, and as a nation.
And not only that, we talk about trying to self-medicate. There are too many individuals who go to melatonin. Melatonin is not a sleep hormone, and insomnia is not caused by melatonin deficiency. It's a naturally occurring hormone produced by the pineal gland, which is located in the center of the brain. The body starts secreting melatonin about an hour before you're supposed to sleep, and the signal to the body at that time to sleep that is regulating a normal sleep cycle. So melatonin, yes, we know can induce sleep, but the issue is, particularly when we're getting our melatonin from the United States, does not regulate melatonin. Melatonin is over the counter. It's not FDA controlled and approved. It's marketed as a natural supplement, where several studies have shown that typical melatonin, you look at the contents of the amount of melatonin that's in that supplement, and some studies have shown the amount is as high as 478% higher than actually stipulated. And because it's not FDA approved, there's no regulatory body to actually follow that. So, for example, in Canada, you need a prescription to get melatonin. In the United States, you don't. United Kingdom, you do. Europe, you do. So they realize that melatonin can have disastrous effects. It can affect...
So let's talk about the Bahamas. We don't need one in the Bahamas either.
Yeah,
it's
and
right on the counter,
it is, and it can interact with many of the medications that you take. So before you take anything, even if it's a natural supplement, particularly if it's melatonin, you need to go to your physician and you need to ask them, is this going to interact with the medications that I'm taking? Because it's something that's very possible, and you don't want to take something that's going to be harmful for you, or something that's not addressing the root cause of your problem. If you have problems sleeping, just taking melatonin, and it's even more of a danger for kids to be taking it routinely, particularly when you're taking over-the-counter melatonin that is not regulated, and we don't know the dose of the melatonin that's contained. So don't just blindly give your kids melatonin. You yourself don't take melatonin, particularly if we're getting it out of the United States or it's unregulated, as it is in the Bahamas, unfortunately. So I'll look at an article that was published in February 2022. That was by JAMA, where it said that the American Medical Association stated that the evidence supporting melatonin use for sleep disturbance is weak. So it's not the go-to in terms of sleep disturbances. Let's find out what the root cause of your sleep disturbances are. For many individuals, it's many things, particularly as you get older, your body starts to fall apart, your prostate enlarges, you're peeing more frequently, more urgently, nocturia. You shouldn't be waking up more than twice in the night. In fact, even we aim for no more than once. For women, you have overactive bladder. There's some women waking up every 45 minutes. How are you going to function? You're not going to function as an individual. Every 45 minutes, you're waking up to urinate. It's not as if most of these people go right back to sleep as soon as they go back to bed. You're waking up your spouse. Your spouse probably already has problems waking up to pee themselves, and then you're waking them up. So you're having the most interrupted, disruptive sleep, and you're waking up and feeling like a zombie. You're going on these roads, a danger to yourself, a danger to your family who was in the car with you, a danger to pedestrians and other drivers. If you think of the number of car accidents that have occurred because of sleep deprivation, because of obstructive sleep apnea, where men are so fatigued that they're actually falling asleep because of obstructive sleep apnea at a stop sign, or they have to have caffeine every hour, every 2 hours just to get by, just to function. You know something's wrong, seek the consult of a physician. It may save your life. just as I mentioned many times from the perspective as urologist, if you seek consult for erectile dysfunction, which you should not live with or feel embarrassed to seek confidential, comprehensive care for, we could always get you back on track. We could always get you to rise again. But that can save your life, because there's a link between cardiovascular disease, early cardiovascular disease, and erectile dysfunction. The same thing with fatigue and obesity and obstructive sleep apnea. If we can address it early, it could possibly give you 20 more years on this earth, and not only 20 more years on this earth, better quality years on this earth. So don't die a sudden death unnecessarily, and the warning signs were there. So even when you go see a physician, you need to be upfront. You need to actually disclose what's going on with your life. If you're having issues with erections, open up. If you don't feel confident or comfortable speaking with that physician, go to another physician. You only have one life. Live the best life possible, and let's get the best quality of life. That means that going to a dozen physicians until you find one that you're comfortable with, then do that.
Yeah, as you say that, I recall, a lot of folks come to the physician and they don't have state exactly what the problem is. You always sometimes have to drag it out of them, and this is why I'm always happy when if for example a man comes to see me, when the wife is there or the spouse is there, because men tend to not just say what's on their mind or actually tell you exactly what's wrong. Women always have to be the ones to say, look, this is the problem. This is the problem, X, Y, and Z. And guys, and I'm speaking to you, what is wrong? Why is it that you can't just express yourself and say what is it? If you come to see a physician, or you go to a physician, you go in there for a service. You have a complaint. Just state the complaint and get it over with. Often you can't get it out of them. You cannot, and they would leave. And they'll be okay with that.
Yeah, they live in ignorance, and they don't want to address the
I don't know
problem
if that's
in the room.
ignorance, man. I don't know.
Or if it's fair, or I think that from young we're taught to, soldier up, suck it up. A real man doesn't complain. A real man just pushes through.
A real man takes care of the problem that he has.
And not only that, he takes care of his family.
And his family, too.
If you want to take care of your family, you need to be in good health. You don't want to become a health burden to them, economic burden to them, or emotional burden to them. They don't want to have to be burying their father at a early age.
When you go on the plane, right? And they said, if oxygen masks falls, you put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Right?
Very much so, yes.
Guys, you got to take care of yourself. You got to make sure that you're okay.
Or do it for your kids.
Or do it for
do
your
it
kids.
for your wife. Do it for your grandkids.
If you're the primary breadwinner and something happens to you, think about the downside security for your family, okay? It's important that we look after our health. If you have a problem, just say what the problem is, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying, I have a problem.
And I've noticed this over the years. Many times I'll get patients coming to me and they'll say, you know what, I dealt with this problem for 5 years, for 8 years. But you know what, I opened up to my friends. We were having a drink, or we were having a cigar. Now, first thing, we shouldn't be having that cigar. Or we were out playing golf. And I mentioned that I was going through this problem. And they mentioned, okay, Dr. Pinto got me over it. And that's why I've come here, because I feel that you can help my friend, you can help my cousin, you can help my brother, then you can help me. So we're here to say that there is no problem that you really can't overcome, particularly if we can pick it up early. So let that be the motivation.
And that's not only with erectile dysfunction, because
it goes through everything. Right? Yes. but I'm talking to what motivates men to get to see a physician. That is true. And that is erectile dysfunction.
That is true. But if you're waking up with headaches all the time, if your eyes are blurry, you can't see, if you're peeing all the time, that is a problem.
If you have chronic back pain.
Chronic back pain. Oh, my goodness. And gas. There's no such thing as this gas, all right? If you're having chronic abdominal issues, get help.
If you see blood in your urine, seek help. If you see blood in your stool, seek help.
Blood in the stool. Listen, and I can say this on the radio. If you have blood in your stool and you're over the age, if you're middle age or even young and you have blood in the stool, please, someone got to make sure you don't have a colon cancer. It's not always hemorrhoids. And hemorrhoids is a diagnosis of exclusion. Even if they're there, make sure nothing else is going on first before you say, this is hemorrhoids. Hemorrhoids is never the first reason or cause of blood in your stool. Please.
I mean, you must be very frustrated as a surgical oncologist.
Very frustrated.
Because
day.
You're seeing too much in the way of stage 3, stage 4 colorectal cancer.
It is insane, okay? And being treated for hemorrhoids or, to think, oh, this is hemorrhoids. No, hemorrhoids is the last thing that you want to think it is. You want to think that it's something else first. And then once you've ruled out everything, and then you say, okay, you know what? This is hemorrhoids and we'll treat this. But this is what you have to at least think, or that there may be another cause. And usually that cause is either a polyp or a colon cancer. And I see this almost daily.
And not only that, no one needs to be dying of colon cancer. It's a very preventable disease. If you have your routine colonoscopies, which are both diagnostic and therapeutic.
Listen, some people get a bad break, okay?
I agree. Genetically, they're predisposed. But
more often than not, it's symptoms that go ignored.
Yes.
Okay? You have change in bowel habits. You get cramping abdominal pain. Every time you eat, you got to go to the bathroom or you're having some issue. You see some blood in your stool and you ignore it. Okay? These are the people that I see.
And then those who need to be extremely diligent and know their physician like their best friend are those who have family history of colon cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer. For some of them have genetic predisposition to have it. So if you have 2 sisters with breast cancer, if you have a cousin with breast cancer, if you have a mom with breast cancer, then you need to be seeing your physician and getting your mammograms, or if you have dense breasts, on ultrasounds as well. And even those with a higher risk, you need to get your MRI, or you might have to get genetic testing in terms of also maybe getting tested for BRCA gene 1 or BRCA gene 2. But please don't have a life of doom and gloom and feel like it's inevitable that you're going to die of breast cancer.
It's not.
And we've mentioned prophylactic mastectomies. I mean, some people, unfortunately, they need to have prophylactic mastectomies, and it can save their life, and they can have a completely normal life. You can have breast reconstruction at the same time, and you can keep your figure. No one needs to know anything, and you can reduce your risk significantly.
The one thing I want to stress is not to ignore things. You can't sweep these things under the rug. The dirt is still there. You sweep dirt under the rug and you can't see it, it doesn't disappear. It's still there. All right? And so I think we tend to ignore symptoms a lot. And then we only show up when it is generally very advanced and it becomes a problem. That's when it's a real problem.
And there are things that we can do. I mean, you need to know for prostate cancer what your PSA value is, blood tests every single year, starting from the age of 40, and every single year after that, at least into the age of 70. We can even argue up into the age of 75. You need to get your colonoscopies at the age of 45, and then again, at 7 years or 8 years after that? Or if you found out polyps, it might be a little bit sooner than that. Might even go to 10 years, but if you have a strong family history, if you have Crohn's disease, if you have ulcerative colitis, if you have anything that predisposes you to getting cancer, then
I often say if you just have a good quality of life and your life expectancy is that you're going to live at least another 4 or 5 years, or expect to maybe 10 years, still get screening. This year alone, I've treated people with breast cancer at the extremes of age. I've treated as young as in the 20s and as old as in the 90s. And it's amazing, right? Often we say, which 90-year-old is going to go out there and get screening for breast cancer? Well, if that 90-year-old is still up and moving around, then yes. Because, I treated a 92-year-old a couple of weeks ago.
I mean, as well. You have to treat the individual as individuals. Some people, some 45-year-olds are not going to live to 47, and some 80-year-olds will live to 95.
We'll live to 95, maybe 100.
I've treated some men in their early 80s years ago from prostate cancer, and they're still thriving, approaching 90.
So, and recognize that all of these things that we say to you are guidelines, right? and guidelines just kind of give us an idea of what we should do. And they're guidelines not meant to be followed like strictly. But obviously, if you have a problem and you're at 90, even though the guidelines may say, oh, no, 85, we stop. No, if you're still 95 or 90 and have an issue, then yes, we can still deal with that and still treat them, right?
And what a lot of persons don't understand is, okay, you have colon cancer, you have prostate cancer, and you may be 82. But if you say, all right, just ignore it, I'll die of old age before it happens, sometimes that life is an intolerable life. And it's a painful life in and out of hospital, an expensive death. Not if it's not expensive to you, but it'll be expensive to the medical system, to PMH. It'll be expensive to the government, which is already overwhelmed with chronic diseases and cancers as well. So always know your body. You know when something is wrong. Always seek help. We talk about annual physicals, but if something's wrong, you need to go before your annual physical. If you just had your annual physical 2 months ago and you feel something has gone awry, don't wait another 10 months to seek help.
And if at your annual physical a problem is identified, that doesn't mean you go back on an annual basis. You got to treat that problem, manage that problem during the course of the year.
And you need to, which was the topic of today, you need to aim for 7 hours of good quality sleep. It's going to increase your longevity. It's going to reduce your chance of developing insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. Is going to reduce your chance of getting coronary artery disease. So if you want to live long, you need to get those 7 hours of good. And not only...
No melatonin.
No melatonin. Not only the hours of sleep, but the quality of sleep, yes. And don't let the bladder control your life day or night. All right, so it was a very interesting talk. Thank you again for being here, Mr. Dr. Wesley Francis. We call Mr. In the British system, you call a surgeon Mr. as a sign of respect. So thank you, Mr. Wesley Francis.